On this Sega Talk, we celebrate 30 years of Sonic the Fighters and take a look back at the AM2 developed arcade classic that threw Virtua Fighter, Fighting Vipers, and Sonic the Hedgehog into a blender. How did this oddball title come to be? What legacy has it left on the Sonic series, and which fighter is our spirit animal? Find out on this episode of Sega Talk. Ha!
Sega Bits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to episode number 186 of Sega Talk. I am Barry, and with me is fashion designer and munitions expert, George.
Hello, everyone.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's 100% fact. I was actually surprised that you knew about my second life.
Wow. And your third life is actually plugging our Patreon. You want to do that for the fine folks?
If you consider yourself a furry fighter, you guys should check us out on patreon.com/segabits, where for $1, as cheap as $1, you could get this episode 2 weeks early, some extras, and if you pay even more, you could even tell us what to do. So if you're into paying people to, well, tell us what to do as in talk on this episode. I just want to clarify that. And if you want more clarification on all that, please check us out at patreon.com/segabits. Thank you.
Absolutely. And yeah, you kind of alluded to Fur Fighters. That's not this episode, but remember that game for the Dreamcast?
Yes. It was a pretty cool game. I didn't know anything about furries when I played the game. I just thought it was a really cool, like, third-person shooter where you played as dolls. I thought it was a cool concept.
Yeah. If any of our Patreon pickers or picker wheel people are listening, throw that one on there. I'd love to talk about it. It's a game I've owned but hardly ever played. But yeah, this episode is actually a Patreon pick. It came from our picker wheel tier. It was actually picked by Ben Hayward, and I know there was a little confusion. Daniel Andres, who is a picker, who, if he's listening to this, get on that Word document and add your picks for the past few months, please. But no, this was a Ben Hayward pick, but we'll be reading his memories at the end of the show. And what is the show about? Well, we are going to be talking about Sonic the Fighters, which was originally released in 1996 for Sega's Model 2B CRX arcade hardware. Sonic the Fighters, known in North America and European arcades as Sonic Championship, was developed by Sega AM2 and saw a relatively limited release worldwide. Despite Sonic's long history across multiple genres, Sonic the Fighters remains the franchise's only officially released traditional one-on-one fighting game, making it a unique and fascinating chapter in Sega and Sonic history. So, George, what is your history with Sonic the Fighters? And did you ever see this arcade machine as a kid?
No, I've never. Well, not as a kid. No, I never saw this. I think it's like pretty rare, if I'm not mistaken. So no, I never saw the arcade as a kid. I played it, emulated. It would be my arcade experience. Besides seeing it at Galloping Ghost, I don't think I've seen it in the wild outside of that. So my history is pretty mute with this game. I really like the graphics in this game. I think the art style is incredible, impeccable even. I think this is a really good use of low polygon. When people think of like attractive low polygon models, I kind of think of this and like maybe Mega Man Legends and a few other games. So highly praised game in the art style direction for sure. What about you?
100%. Yeah, for me, I remember actually seeing this game as a kid in the maybe late 90s, maybe before the Dreamcast came out, but maybe during the Saturn era. At the Minnesota State Fair, they had one. And wow. I was so excited to see it. And I was also so, like, like I didn't know what it was. This was before like before we all knew like the whole gamography of Sonic. You were just kind of like, imagine, it's late 90s, you've already played the Genesis games, you're aware of the Saturn, but you haven't really you haven't owned it. And then you see this Sonic Championship arcade machine, and you're like, there's a 3D Sonic game? And you know that you can't play it at home because you've never heard of it. And so you're like, oh my God, I have to like soak up as much of it right now because I'll probably never play this again. And so I did play it quite a lot in that just like moment. And then I think I was telling my dad, like, we got to buy this machine. We have to like save it from the state fair because it's like it wasn't outside, but it was definitely like in a covered area that just didn't seem like a place a cool machine like this should be. And my dad actually was like a little on board. Like, I think he actually talked to the owner and it was like, do you sell the machines? Like, would you sell that machine? And the guy, I don't know what he told my dad. I should follow up with him and see like if he actually did make any attempt, but obviously I never bought it. And then years later we had the remasters, the HD releases. We also had that Sonic Gems collection release, which was actually one of the first discs I bought when I got a Wii. I actually skipped the GameCube, so yeah, that was pretty big. But yeah, that's my history with it, and I'm sure I'll bring up some more. But let's get some gameplay footage going as I talk about the official story of the game. So, yeah, believe it or not, this game actually had a story.
Wow.
This is coming from the Japanese magazine Gamist, issue 173. This is a translation, so please bear with me. A large quantity of robots suddenly appeared on the land where peaceful days continued thanks to Sonic's frequent actions and laid waste to its surroundings. This must be Eggman's doing, but where is this huge bunch of robots coming from? As Tails muttered to himself, he got an emergency message from Espio. In the video Espio sent, there was a huge fortress floating on the satellite orbit. Dr. Eggman was dispatching large quantities of robots from the giant space fortress Death Egg 2. Sonic decided to get to Death Egg 2 alone using a single-seat space rocket, Lunar Fox, that Tails invented. However, in order to fly the rocket, 8 Chaos Emeralds must be collected to act as a power source. Sonic's friends, who are spread throughout the world, were guarding the emeralds separately so that they were not misused by Eggman. One of them ended up being stolen by Fang in the meantime, however. First, Sonic and Tails flew over to where Knuckles is. If the rocket is single seat, shouldn't the toughest guy be the one riding it? Knuckles provoked Sonic after hearing what's going on. When Sonic, who obviously believes he was the strongest, accepted Knuckles' challenge and was about to fight him, Tails forced his way between the two. Tails proposed fighting fair and square in the ring, and the one who wins against all of their buddies in the world will ride the rocket. Who will be the one to win against everyone, collect the Chaos Emeralds, and save the world? The gong of fate is now echoing. I want to get that on a shirt. The gong of fate is now echoing. First off, what do you think about that story?
It's a little bit much for a fighting game. It's like, I mean, it just because we're talking about tournaments. I saw Mortal Kombat 2 this weekend, and I was like, oh my god, this story is so like cheesy bad. But then I was expecting like, dude, this is Mortal Kombat. What did I expect? Like Leonardo DiCaprio Academy Award winning movie. So it's like
You should have.
but I definitely did not expect this out of like a story that's like more complex. I mean, they could just say that, Eggman's holding the tournament and everyone has to fight. That's
Right.
it. And I'm good enough with that. What do you think?
It's interesting because, yeah, when you look at some of those like spin-off games that are more in the racing or fighting genre, it's either been Eggman's holding a tournament, which I think was like the Sonic Riders plot, and Sonic R, or Dodonpa is holding a tournament, which is, I think, a smart invention for the new racing games, because then he's like a third party, so it makes Eggman now a part of it, but not holding it, so he can't cheat and stuff. But in this case, it's very interesting because I think the thought process was, well, why would Sonic fight his friends for the emeralds when they could just all team up on the one villain, which is really, I guess, well, Fang, Bark, and Bean seem to be like the bad ones. So why don't Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy team up against those three and then just get the emeralds? But obviously, everyone wants to be the hero in this game, and there's only one seat on the rocket ship, which is such a funny plot point. It's like Tails built it, but everyone gets a chance at riding it. Why doesn't Tails go, you know what? I built this. Screw you guys. I'm going to the Death Egg. It's kind of funny.
Tails has no backbone, and you just get all walked over, basically.
That's true. And the plot, too, is very like Power Stone, where it's people all over the world. They all have emerald, or they all have the stones, and they're all fighting over the power, and then they fight the big bad at the end, which is Power Stone's one of my favorite non-Sega games, for sure. So I like that comparison. What are your thoughts about how it kind of compares to the Genesis games by having a Death Egg 2?
I mean, it's cool to always connect these games. I'm not a big. I mean, I don't need the connections. Obviously, it's not needed, but it's cool that they gave us something a little for the OG players. Obviously, when you go to the arcade, it would be a cool little surprise for you that it connects back to the games you played at home. So yeah, always good. Did that excite you?
Interesting. It does excite me. I think the design of the Death Egg 2 is very weird. It looks like a mobile, like a universe on a stick, like all these little things are coming off of it. I think it's funny too that in Sonic 4 Episode 2 and 1, we also had Tails rocket ships, and we also had the Death Egg Mark II, which is a different thing. It's like what they put around Little Planet, but it's like they did steal some elements from this for Sonic 4, and the canon nerds like me are like, oh well, the Death Egg 2 was destroyed, and then Robotnik had to go back and build the Death Egg Mark II using pieces of it. Like you have to use that sort of stupid headcanon.
Right.
So Sonic the Fighters, it is a one-on-one 3D fighting game built in the style of Sega AM2's arcade classics like Virtua Fighter, Virtua Fighter 2, and Fighting Vipers. Players battle across best of 3 rounds, aiming to completely drain their opponent's health bar before time runs out. If the clock hits zero, victory goes to the fighter with the most remaining health, and in the rare case of a tie, the round ends in a draw and is replayed. Players choose from 8 playable characters and fight through a 10-match arcade mode to complete the game. Combat is built around 3 primary buttons, punch, kick, and barrier, combined with joystick movements to execute attacks, defensive maneuvers, and special techniques. Can you think of other instances where Sega used an existing game engine for a different IP and franchise, and how did those work out in your opinion? I have a few in my head, but I'm interested to hear what come to your mind. So
you mean like Fist of the North Star being on the RGG
There you
engine?
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, that one's an easy one. It was really janky game. It's obviously they didn't put enough, like as much love as other Yakuza games, but I actually found it really fun. And I'm not even a Fist of the North Star fan, and I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. I like the cel shaded look. I like that you could say words and then grab the words and beat your opponents with the words that you just said, like a manga panel. And this game kind of reminds me of that. It's very Looney Toony, if that's the right term, in its animation and its facial expressions. So it kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, they did a good job with this. And one of the cool things about this is the animation and cartoon-like nature of it.
Yeah, one that comes to my mind was we just talked about it, Dick Tracy, which used the Shinobi engine and actually had I believe the Shinobi creator working on the game. So it's funny because sometimes in Sega history, they will either be in a pinch, so they'll just use a pre-existing engine for a licensed game, and it actually usually works out because it's like, if you have this great game, why not just have it be a Dick Tracy game rather
Yeah.
than developing something entirely new. I didn't ask it here, but why do you think Sega does not do this more often? Like, especially with, and we'll get to the development, a studio, an internal studio working on an IP from another internal studio. It seems like it rarely happens. To memory, maybe like the Mario and Sonic games are from a different team. The oh man, what am I thinking of? It was in my head and then it just fluttered away. I'll remember it. But like that comes to mind. We've had other instances, but very rarely. Phantasy Star, I guess you could argue, went from it kind of was folded into Sonic Team. Panzer Dragoon had people who worked on Team Andromeda, and then it kind of morphed into Smilebit. So there are instances, but like, why is it we haven't gotten like an Atlas Fantasy Star game? Like what, or like the Angry Birds people? I guess they did. No, they didn't do Rumble.
Maybe
I don't
like
think they
the
did.
studio having pride. Like I doubt that Atlas would be like, yeah, I want to work on a Sonic RPG game or a Skies of Arcadia when they think that their IPs that they've been working on for the last 30 years are more viable, probably in their point of
Yeah.
view. The crazy one was that Atlas did that game where they did Fire Emblems mixed, and it was like I think they kind of dropped the ball on that. It's like not even really Fire Emblem. You're like a like pop group or something, like a J-pop group or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, I think it's because of pride. Like I would think the same thing with Sonic Team. Like I don't think they would want to make a Yakuza game when they haven't released a new Sonic game in like 35 years. It feels like Frontiers has been way too long. So I think
Yeah.
that's an issue too now.
Yeah, it's interesting because you even see it with like film studios where it's like, why hasn't like Disney made a Star Wars movie? Why is it that they have to use Lucasfilm animation when Disney has? And I guess the only instances was Big Hero 6, which is Marvel owned, but like it's an imprint. I think it's not even a Marvel comic. To my memory. But anyway, so this game, though, it borrows heavily from Fighting Vipers. So every arena is enclosed by walls, ropes, or metal grates, allowing opponents to be knocked out of the ring with the right finishing blow. But unlike Fighting Vipers, the arena walls themselves can't be destroyed. So, Fighting Vipers, it doesn't get a lot of love today, but back in the day, I felt that it was giving Virtua Fighter a run for its money in terms of innovations. Do you think Sonic the Fighters was successful in borrowing elements from Fighting Vipers?
I think so. Especially considering that Fighting Vipers felt more like a over the top. You have a guy with a guitar, a skateboard guy. They have armor, and it bursts open, and then you hit them, and then you could burst them through the wall, and the wall just shatters. It's very dramatic. Something that Virtua
Right.
Fighter isn't. And I feel like it's the perfect match for a cartoony,
Yeah.
Looney Tune type game that they thought of as Sonic. So I think it worked perfectly. It kind of meshes well because Sonic is more of a spectacle than it is a virtual fighter, just dojo fighting game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Looney Tunes. Like, I feel as though if Sonic Team made this game, the characters would not be acting the way they do. It's almost like it is a completely different development team got to work on the Sonic IP when it was still kind of fresh. Like, I think the series was only 5 years old at this point. This is technically like a 5th anniversary game, even though they never celebrated the 5th anniversary. And it released, I think, in May, like I was saying at the intro, 30 years ago. So this was actually the anniversary month as we record this. But it is interesting because you get to see these, like, this AM2 take on these characters, and they're much more Looney Toony, expressive, squash and stretch. Like, I think they were really experimenting with how they could distort models because characters would get flattened and then like boing, boing, boing. Everyone felt very gooey.
Yeah.
Sonic definitely didn't have bones. Like everyone was like made of jello. It was very wacky, but fun. And I feel as though there's a lot of like wild little like animations and things that happen between characters because they're all unique. They all have special moves. Now I'm not doing a breakdown of every move here. I'm not going to be like, well, this character had a pop gun and this character had a hammer. So you can play the game and experience all those little elements. But yeah, as far as like the Fighting Vipers elements, there was the barrier system, which is not so much like the Fighting Vipers armor system, if I'm remembering right, where there was like head, body, and legs, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, like torso, I think they might call it, but yeah.
Right, yeah, torso, legs, and then head. Now in this game, though, it's a barrier system, which is almost like the shield in the Sonic games. So each player actually begins a match with a limited number of barrier charges that are depleted after taking powerful attacks or by activating hyper mode. So when hyper mode is triggered, characters gain the ability to chain attacks rapidly for long combo strings, similar to the system seen in Street Fighter Alpha 2. And it also grants certain characters modified or entirely new moves, including some really bizarre abilities unique to specific fighters. And again, I'd urge our listeners to seek the game out and play it and experience those for themselves, because they're really weird. But because the barrier stock does not refill between rounds, players actually lose the ability to guard or activate hyper mode altogether, which dramatically increases the intensity for later fights. Even without barrier protection, fighters can perform sidestep dodges to evade attacks or maneuver behind opponents, briefly stunning them and opening the door for counterattacks. So what are your thoughts on this implementation of the guard system? Clearly it's like a reworking of the armor system.
Yeah.
But it's different. And I feel as though even though this is like a kind of a kiddie game, it's like Virtua Fighter Kids, but a little easier, I would argue.
Yeah.
Despite that, like the guard system does go away, so you can't spend the whole game blocking. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a good thing because this game's supposed to be a party game. And I feel like when you're passing that controller between friends, you don't want to have a match that lasts 5 minutes of you just blocking or like counting down the clock because you hit them a couple times and now you're just going to block the whole round until they die. The time runs out.
Right.
So I think keeping it exciting. Not only that, seeing someone with no barrier dodge everything perfectly and take the other person out is pretty awesome too. I mean, so I like it. You?
Yeah, no, I love it. One of the things I love about AM2 fighters is they always bring these interesting and fun little elements in, and then they completely change the way that you play the game. Because I'll be honest, I hardly ever use the barrier, just because I'm like, it's gonna go away if I spend all this time blocking. So I typically dodge, or I just go at it. It's not a question that I had in the notes, but I'm wondering, who do you usually play as in this game? Like, who would you pick?
I usually pick random characters, but I do have Bean the Dynamite. I like his design, so I do pick him, even though he's not my playstyle. But I do like his design, and I really appreciate this game because the new characters they did add to it really do fit the classic Sonic designs really well.
Yeah.
So I like that about this game a lot. So that's why I'm gonna rep Bean. What about you?
Good pick. Yeah, for me, it's always like I always seek out the new characters. In this case, though, I usually go with Fang the Sniper, just because at the time he was never playable in like any games. I think outside of the racing Sonic Drift. So Drift 2. So, it's kind of wild that Fang, he has kind of made a resurgence thanks to Sonic Superstars, but when you think of his playable appearances, it's very slim. I think this is maybe the only the second game he's playable in, and the only 3D game for him. So it's like, man, if you want to experience Fang, this is your one shot. And I do like his long range attacks. I think it's fun because he can attack. He does this like funny he does that like kick, 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 kick,
yeah.
like he uses his feet. And I just love his sassy little face. He's such a stinker. But there are, you mentioned Bean, there are the two new characters. So the Sonic of the Fighters roster, it's quite unique. It mixes Genesis cast members as well as Game Gear and 32X characters. So you have Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy Rose from the core cast. Fang the Sniper from the Game Gear games, making his 3D debut, as I mentioned. And then, oddly, Espio the Chameleon is the only character from the Chaotix to appear in this game. And, you know, as we've experienced in past Sonic games, characters like Mighty and Ray actually made their debut in Sega Sonic. And then Mighty was folded into the Chaotix. If I'm remembering correctly, Charmy and Vector were part of Sonic's band concept from Sonic 1. And I'm not really sure where Espio came from. I don't think he was in the band. But it is odd that like they omitted Vector, Charmy, and Mighty. What do you think? Would you have preferred them to be in this game? Or do you like the idea of just like one of the Chaotix making the jump into the game?
That's a good question. I think for fans, obviously, they would want to have their a whole Chaotix crew here. So I think it's just they didn't add them because of time, of course, because they would have to have their own movesets and stuff. That's why I always wish they would be. I mean, I'm surprised it never happened because of how fast they were releasing 3D fighters that they didn't do a Sonic the Fighters 2. Just because they did Fighting Vipers 2 and a bunch of other games got sequels. But yeah, I think it would have been cool. I do wonder how well this game did. Like, that it never got a sequel. That's the crazy part for me, that they didn't see the viability in a Sonic fighting game.
That is weird because, it's kind of hard to track the success of this game because I'm presuming it had a limited arcade run, but I'm assuming most of those machines sold. And then I'm guessing it was just because they were moving over to Naomi in the next year or two that it started to feel old. I mean, it is a late era 3D AM2 fighter on this older hardware. I'm sure they were moving into Virtua Fighter 3 at this time. They were moving away from the Saturn and the Dreamcast, or towards the Dreamcast. So there was that. And then one thought I just had on the Chaotix too, it is kind of funny that they had Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing and Transformed. Neither of them had any of the Chaotix. They had Team Sonic Racing, and they did the unthinkable of having, what was it, Team Vector, starring Vector, Vector, Blaze, and Silver, I think, which was like the stupidest idea. It's like you have a tree. Sonic Heroes established that the Chaotix is now like a trio, and then you have a game built around teams of 3. And what do? They completely split up the Chaotix, and they're like, oh, Espio already got his turn in Sonic the Fighters, so now it's Vector's turn to appear in Team Sonic Racing, which is so stupid. But one of the things I actually love about Cross Worlds is that in the offline mode, you can, in Festival Park or whatever it was called, Race Park, you battle through all of the Sonic Heroes teams, which I thought was really a fun nod to Sonic Heroes. So anyway, the Chaotix podcast will presume later on. Right now we're going to be talking about Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite. So these are clearly a bear and not a stick of dynamite, but oddly they did call him Bean the Dynamite. Bean is actually a green woodpecker. And according to his bio, he loves sports and is especially good at soccer. George, I don't know. I think I know why, but to me, Bean always felt like he was like a South American character. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, it's
Um,
because there's that Three Amigos or Caballeros
oh,
movie,
that's it. Yeah,
the
the Three
Argentinian
Caballeros.
parrot. Yeah.
Yeah, Donald's cousins.
Yeah.
Joe Joe Carioca, and then
It was the
trying to remember the
rooster.
name of the rooster. Yeah, the rooster. I love that movie. I used to
It's a
watch
great
that all the
movie.
time as a kid.
Same. I had
They're
it on
like,
VHS.
have
It's
have you been to Bahia, Donald? And he's like, They're like, oh, you must go to Bahia.
I love
Let's
the
go.
music was good. They shot the scenes. I'm like, I want to go
Yeah.
there. Yeah, great. But
Oh
that's
my
why
god.
I
But
think
yeah, that's
we're thinking
yeah.
South America.
He's from Cuba, I think.
Oh, really?
But
He's
Bean
Cuban?
always felt. I think he is.
I thought he was Argentinian, but yeah, I don't know.
Oh, he's Argentinian. I think you're right. Yes, yes, yes. But he smokes cigars a lot, which is why I was thinking he was Cuban for some reason. But Bean, I don't know. Bean always felt like he was from Brazil to me.
The
Um,
color,
I don't know
the
why.
flag.
I guess the color of the flag. He's got the bandana. He loves soccer. But apparently in this game, he's also an explosives expert, as he has the ability to craft bombs, and his name is the Dynamite. Bean was actually a Sega AM2 invention, so not a Sonic Team character. He has his roots outside of the Sonic universe, being derived from the 1988 Sega System 16 game Dynamite Ducks, which I think we did a Sega talk on. I could be wrong. But the game stars two anthropomorphic ducks named Bin and Pin, who fight through the streets of enemies with an array of weapons, including throwable black bombs. Dynamite Ducks predates the original Sonic the Hedgehog by 3 years, and the the Fighters Mega Mix official guide actually establishes that Bean is Bin's son. So this is the son of Bin in Dynamite Ducks. The difference in species is never explained. So he then again, that's kind of a Sonic thing. Like I think Sally Acorn is like half chipmunk, half squirrel.
How does that
So
work?
it's possible. I think maybe Bin's wife is a woodpecker, and I guess he was born a woodpecker. I don't know. Bean has not appeared as a main character in a Sonic the Hedgehog game since 1996, although he is unlockable in the Sega Saturn game Fighters Mega Mix, which brings together a number of Sega AM2 made fighting games. Among other novelty characters, his alternate costume in this game is one which makes the character resemble Bin from Dynamite Ducks. Oddly enough, he also makes a cameo appearance in a later version of Virtua Striker 2, which is funny because he's a fan of soccer. So look at that. I think that's where it probably came from. They were like, well, he's in Virtua Fighter Striker 2, so he must be a huge soccer fan. Bark the polar bear, he comes from North Island, which to my knowledge is an island we've never seen in the games, but shares the naming convention of South Island, West Side Island, and it has no relation to North Star Island, which we saw in Sonic Superstars. He is said to be the island's number one snowboarder, and is a blunt, quiet, and gentle heart who loves nature. He is also said to be a very shy guy. Like Bean, Bark also appears in Fighters Mega Mix. So I'm going to take a break for you, George, to share your love and thoughts on Bark and Bean.
Dislike maybe.
Mhm.
Well,
or would you have preferred Vector and Charmy have taken their place?
I think Bean was pretty good. I think Bark the polar bear is kind of like no one. I don't see too many people into that character, and I think Bean has a cool history with Sega with the Dynamite Ducks. And we did do an episode on it, and it is called Bean the Dynamite's origin, basically, I think is what it was called. So we did talk about it. I think that Bark the polar bear not having any like actual history or be very interesting, he's kind of like I would say Big the Cat before Big the Cat was even invented, because he's a shy guy that just likes to hang out by himself, and he's big.
Yeah.
That's this whole
Yeah.
character. He doesn't like soccer. He doesn't have explosives. You know what I mean? He doesn't have more to him that like Bean seems to offer. So I would have liked to keep him and just replace Bark with Mighty, maybe. Or Vector, one of those two would have been cool. Maybe Mighty, because we already have a green character.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I like it actually when fighting games, especially like the crossover fighting games, will have a unique character or characters. Because then, like, as time goes on, you're like, oh yeah, who's that character from? And it's like, oh, they only appeared in Marvel versus SNK, or Capcom versus SNK, and you're like, oh wow, that's wild. And so I like the idea of having like unique characters to fighting games. I also like it when these like spin-off games become the first playable appearance. So for example, in Crossworlds, we have the first playable appearance of Sage. And so I like when these games kind of set a precedent, and you're like, oh, if you want to play that character, check out this spin-off game. You can play as Fang for the first time. There are two... and when two identical characters face off, so you might be wondering, well, what happens when Sonic fights Sonic in this game? So the game introduces a playful pre-match cutscene in which a Dr. Eggman UFO arrives and uses a cloning ray to create a black and white duplicate of the fighter, setting the stage for a mirror match. And I need to look back at the Archie comics, but I feel like Ian Flynn would have worked that in at one point, because he always does the funniest thing where it's like, oh, these are like alternate skins from the GameCube multiplayer mode, and he's like, no, it's the metal virus. You know. But I was actually just reading the latest IDW Sonic comics, and there's a scene where Sonic's shadow comes out to fight him, and it's like a security element from this like new mysterious character, and it almost reminded me of the cloning ray, but instead of being black and white, they almost looked like a weird like painting. Like their eyes were all weird and their mouth was weird, like a Picasso. But anyway, so after you defeat the game's 8 main opponents and collect all the Chaos Emeralds, the player character boards the Lunar Fox and heads into space for the game's final showdown. The adventure culminates in battles against Metal Sonic and Dr. Eggman aboard the Death Egg 2, and despite not being playable in the arcade original and the GameCube port, Metal Sonic and Eggman are playable in the re-releases from 2012 onwards, but more on these ports at the end of the pod. Sonic the Fighter super fans might be yelling, oh, why don't you mention Honey the Cat? Well, she plays a role in the development history. So let's talk about development. I'm sure you were shouting, where's Honey the Cat?
I was just about to say it.
You're a huge Honey fan. You have a statue of her behind you, I think.
That's why I have to blur out the background. I'm afraid of the shrine coming through.
Oh, man. Yeah, I could tell you about my Honey shrine, but it's not the cat. So the origins of Sonic the Fighters are surprisingly informal. So during the development of Fighting Vipers, one of the AM2 developers was working on the character who was working on the character Honey, reportedly spent spare time experimenting by adding rough playable versions of Sonic and Tails into the game's engine. And while these early builds were unfinished and inaccessible during normal gameplay, the concept was enough to catch the attention of AM2 head Yu Suzuki. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, I do. What happened to him?
I don't know. I think he bought a car and ran off to South America. But Yu Suzuki was intrigued by this, so he presented the idea to producer Hiroshi Kataoka. And Kataoka initially worried that a fighting game centered around Sonic characters punching and kicking might not sit well with Sonic co-creator Yuji Naka. And to his surprise, Naka was immediately receptive to the idea. Yeah, which is funny because that seems like a Nintendo thing where they're like, no, Mario will not punch and kick. No,
That
no,
was
no.
literally, I think, a discussion about Smash Bros. And about how hard it was because of that whole fighting thing. So I was like not really surprised that it was a concern, obviously, but I was surprised that Yuji Naka was just like, yeah, oh, that's amazing. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
fighting, of
and
course.
what I love about this game compared to Smash Brothers, and I know people listening are like, Smash Brothers is so much better, Barry. There's so many more games.
They're
The
totally
the
different
fighting
too.
systems, it's a different game. But what I will say is I'm glad that Sonic Team and AM2 and Sega had the balls to like not dumb it down so much. Like punches are punches and kicks are kicks in here. It's not like they're building up and then they're like flying away. It's not to throw the person off the board. It's to like beat the health out of them. Um, and so from there, the team actually decided to continue building directly from the Fighting Vipers engine, modifying it to better fit the colorful world of Sonic while also streamlining the gameplay mechanics. That shared foundation is still obvious in the final product. Sonic the Fighters closely resembles Fighting Vipers in both animation style and overall structure, and at least one unused character design bears a strong resemblance to Honey herself from Fighting Vipers. One of the game's most fascinating hidden secrets is Honey the Cat, a yellow feline fighter with black hair who was based directly on Candy from Fighting Vipers, whose original Japanese name was Honey. Although the character existed within the game's data, she was completely unused in the original arcade release and remained undiscovered for years. It wasn't until the release of Sonic Gems Collection that Honey finally resurfaced, turning what had once been an obscure leftover character into a legitimate part of Sonic history. Her inclusion also further highlights just how closely tied Sonic the Fighters was to the development and assets of Fighting Vipers. Honey the Cat was designed by Masahiro T. Sugiyama, who worked as a character designer on both Sonic the Fighters and Fighting Vipers. In an interview, Hiroshi Kataoka confirmed that the early concept for Sonic the Fighters essentially involved placing Sonic characters into the Fighting Vipers framework, making Honey a natural fit for the transition. So basically, they were like, let's just modify Honey into Honey, and there we go. We've got a new character.
Dang,
The
that's
version
fast.
of That's smart. The version of Honey seen in Fighting Vipers shares many of the same poses, animations, and visual traits as her Sonic counterpart, and even uses a special move called Cat Punch. So that's actually, imagine that, like she's this human woman who's a fighter, does a cat punch, and Sega's like, you're a cat now. Um, Likely part of the inspiration behind making her a cat was that. The game also marked a major milestone for the franchise. It became the first title to render Sonic the Hedgehog as a real-time 3D polygonal character. At the time, many Sega teams struggled with translating Sonic's iconic 2D design into 3 dimensions, and AM2 faced similar challenges early on, but Sonic's original design process actually provided an unexpected advantage. According to reports, Yuji Naka supplied the team with a physical 3D Sonic model that had originally been created to help artists animate the character during the development of the original Sonic the Hedgehog. I remember hearing stories when they made that Simpsons episode where Homer and Bart went into the third dimension, and the team were like, how do we make a 3D Bart? And then they were like, wait, they made toys. And so they would actually go out and buy the dolls and study them and scan them in. And so it's kind of similar here. They're like, oh man, how do we make a 3D Sonic? And they're like, wait, we have models from the first game. Because remember, at this time, Sonic toys they didn't have like true figures of Sonic or statues of him. It was really like plush dolls, like 2-dimensional flat things that didn't really look like a 3-dimensional Sonic. I honestly don't know the first time they made a consumer available like 3D Sonic model like some of the ones you might see in the background of my room here. So you can imagine it was quite difficult. Now we're going to take a look at some early screenshots of Sonic Tales actually dropped in Sonic the Fighters. So let's check this out. And George, let's see if I have it Yes. So let me know once you have the
Concept
Sonic
art?
Retro page up.
Yeah, it's up.
Yeah. So first off, we have some concept art. This is Rocket Metal, referred to as Metal Sonic Mark V Space Type. He does appear in the game. And one of the things I love about this design is it kind of evokes, I believe, the enemy in Sonic Rush Adventure. He's like a green rocket robot.
Oh yeah.
I think that's kind of cool. And then these early screenshots. So you can see here, if you're watching on video, these are actually 3D Sonic and Tails from within Fighting Vipers. So this is not footage or images from Sonic the Fighters. This is actually that model work that was being done in this guy's free time. And you can see here that he definitely was struggling a bit with Sonic's like head shape and quills.
Oh yeah.
Sonic's head doesn't truly appear like rounded. It's a little more of the American like cartoon version where the muzzle's a little, I guess, more defined.
He's also like,
I mean, they don't look bad.
Pointing and nagging, it looks like, at Tails.
Yeah, there's a few poses. It's them like, I think he's doing the pose, but his legs not, like the Sonic 1 pose, but it's his legs not moved.
Yeah.
There's also the tile floor that they have, and there's like a very simplistic green hill that the guy designed. If you scroll down, we can see more there. But yeah, that's what, like, honestly, like if you're working in game design and you're trying to kill time between projects or just like, waste time, do stuff like this, because it could always turn into another game, But yeah, I think he did a good job overall. Like looking at Sonic's quills, I think he does kind of nail it, but I can see why they probably had to go back to the drawing board, just because Sonic does look more like a statue than like a living character, and I'm sure you had to do a bit more, especially with those quills, so that he could move around appropriately. So unlike other games on this podcast, it seems that Sonic the Fighters had a very smooth development cycle, with AM2 and Sonic Team actually working well together to create a game that was initially just a programmer having a bit of fun on the side. What are your thoughts on the development here? Are you surprised that like Yu Suzuki and Yuji Naka got along so well?
I'm not surprised that they got along, because I mean, I've read interviews with them in the past in magazines, and Yuji Naka seems to always kind of glaze Yu Suzuki, but at the same time, they had some sort of competitive spirit, because he would also say that he's going to be the next Yu Suzuki, or so. I mean, as being the number one at Sega, and I guess he did prove that. Sonic is a huge franchise, and I think that alone, maybe he didn't have as many hits after that one franchise. Like, we could argue that Knights and other games that we like, Choo Choo Rocket, weren't as big compared to Virtual Fighter and other Outrun or whatever in arcades. But I think they do get along, and I'm not surprised. I think at this point, AM2 was at the top of their game, and they were just cranking out games crazy. They were basically a prestige factory that just, I think it's as close as what RGG is today, as you could tell, because Sonic Team is taking like 10 years, and they've released like 5 games since Frontier, so that says a lot.
It does. And I earlier in the podcast, I remembered something and then I forgot it. What I was thinking of is that the AM2 games are now under the RGG banner, even though RGG is not AM2. Like, it's not like it morphed into that. So that's an example of another Sega IP being handled by a different team. And I don't remember maybe I never shared this on the podcast, but I did like a deep dive on the, just personally on the development team behind Crossworlds, because people were like going, why why is there a Galaxy Force 2 stage in the game and there are no other Sega tracks? And I looked it up, and basically like the development legacy of the Crossworlds team who did the Initial D racing games, their arcade legacy can be charted all the way back to the Galaxy Force 2 team. So it's like there is, I believe the game's director or designer or producer, one of his probably earliest jobs was working at Sega when that game was in development. So you got to imagine, like, you know, that's the big game you first either witness the development of or assist the development in, and then decades later you're making a game, you're like, yeah, let's throw Galaxy Force 2 in there. So that's the reasoning for that. But let's talk about the music. So the music Sonic the Fighters received its own official soundtrack release called Sonic the Fighters Soundtracks. And that always amuses me that in Japan it's not soundtrack, they call them soundtracks. An album features the game's energetic and distinctly arcade-inspired score. The soundtrack was composed and arranged by Maki Maro and Takanobu Mitsuyoshi, our good friend. The latter well known for his work on the Daytona USA game, as well as dozens, if not 100 others. What are your thoughts on the music of this game compared to other AM2 titles, and also how it compares to Sonic music? Memorable or weird? Or
I'm trying to remember the music. I haven't played this game in a while, so to me, I'm like, dang, this one caught me off guard. I didn't know we were going to talk about the music, so I don't know how it compares to other Sonics. I totally forgot about it. I'm assuming that it's a good soundtrack. I have never played a Sonic game with a bad soundtrack. Like, can you name one with one bad soundtrack? So I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was kind of forgettable.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That was a really forgettable soundtrack. It was kind of like trying to be an adventure game soundtrack, and not a Sonic soundtrack.
I would say the soundtrack of this game, like, I'm not going to really attempt it, but it's very blaring. It's very loud. It's very fast. It's almost too fast. In college was known for being the guy that had every single Sonic game soundtrack, because we were all on Macs. I think I've told this story before on the pod, but we were all on Macs, and there was a third-party software you could download at the time where within your like dorm or your computer system, everyone was on the same network, and you could actually populate your iTunes library with everyone's playlists as long as they shared their playlist on the computer network. And then people realized that with another third party app or something like that, you could download it. So people were sharing music constantly in college. It was awesome. And people were like, there's this guy named Barry, and he has every Sonic game soundtrack. And I met this one guy. He actually, he became a good friend of mine in school, and he later went on to some really cool things. But he would tell me, he's like, man, I made it through finals week just by listening to like 5 days worth of Sonic music, thanks to you.
Dang.
And so with all that in mind, this is a soundtrack I don't usually return to because it's too fast, too energetic, and too loud. The tracks are catchy, but they're like, man, it's like listening to an energy drink commercial. It's just like, do you remember the tracks that go like that's like the whole, and I mean it's kind of like Looney Tunes in how crazy it is, like you know, you're like, oh man.
And I'm trying to think, would it have been better if they kind of just used the like remixed some old tracks, like do a Sonic version of an AM2 Virtual Fighter 2 track where they try to make it more jazzy, feel like Sonic on the Genesis?
I feel like this game would have benefited, I hate to say it, from like the Sonic CD treatment, where in the West we got like a different soundtrack. I do like the soundtrack for this game. It does suit it, but man, I don't know, it's almost too fast for me. It's too much. It's overwhelming. I can imagine an alternate universe where this game, like I'm playing it and it's a lot more like Marvel versus Capcom, where it's just like, kind of jazzy techno kind of stuff. That said, it is good. I do like the soundtrack, I think, more than Sonic and All Stars Racing Transform, just because I don't like dubstep. But yeah, this is a soundtrack, I will say, and I'm sure there are fans of it. I don't hate it, but it's just not a game soundtrack I would ever throw on.
There's gonna be people really upset with
There's
you.
gonna be. I know. I feel like it needed a vocal theme. Like, I'm struggling to remember what the theme song is. It's just like chaotic. But I feel like if there was one where it's like Sonic the Fighter, like, or with Takanobu Mitsuyoshi doing it, Sonic the Fighter,
that would have set it apart.
You gotta fight for what's right. Oh yeah, like that.
Beautiful.
So, unfortunately for Sonic fans, the game never saw a port to the Sega Saturn. In fact, the moment the arcade game was announced, a Saturn port was said to be released within months. However, the release date forever moved as late as 1997, with a vague 1998 release date promised. It is unknown if any work was ever done on a home port, but Bark and Bean did cameo on the Saturn in Fighters Megamix. And I remember playing like Bark versus Bean and alone in my basement and being like, this is the best it's going to get. I'm never going to experience Sonic the Fighters again, but at least I got this.
I didn't know that Super Smash Brothers came out in 1999. I legit thought that this was like kind of a reacting to the fact that the N64 had a fighting game, but I guess it had nothing to do with it. That I didn't know it came out.
When did Super Smash Brothers come out to this N64?
It said 1999 sometime. So
wow.
The fact that this predates it by 3 years.
Wait, so people were... that's insane. So people were at home playing Super Smash Brothers and telling me how awesome this game is. Well, Sonic Adventure existed.
Yeah, embarrassing.
Like, Sonic Adventure came out late 1998, and January 1999... Man, you know what? I like Nintendo games. I don't hate Nintendo. I don't hate Nintendo fans, but they lie to themselves so much. Like, are you kidding me? You're sitting at home with your jaw on the floor at Super Smash Brothers, and Sonic Adventure exists? Like, that game was, like, oh my god, VGA out, like, sharp. Oh my god. Anyway, that's crazy. So, it wasn't until 2005 that Sonic Gems Collection for the GameCube gave fans a home port of Sonic the Fighters, and with it fans mined the data and learned about Honey the Cat and all the secrets that the game contained. In 2012, Sega released a digital HD port of the game to PSN and Xbox Live Arcade as a part of their Model 2 collection, which added the ability to play as Eggman, Metal Sonic, and, for the first time, Honey the Cat. 2021's Lost Judgment and 2023's The Man Who Erased His Name featured Sonic the Fighter's arcade cabinets with the game playable, complete with the 3 new roster additions from 2012. Unfortunately, as of 2024, the XBLA version has been delisted, and if I'm remembering, the Virtua Fighter 2 port was also delisted at that time. But yeah, despite that, Limited Run Games did make a physical release, which I did pick up. What's your go-to way to play Sonic the Fighters, George? Or what ability do you have to play it right now?
Definitely lost the 2 Yakuza games easy. I didn't pick it up on physical. I don't know what happened. It seems to pass me by. I did get the Virtual Fighter 2. Oh, or did this game get a physical release?
So it's funny because, yeah, I really feel like because Limited Run Games fumbled Sonic Generations so bad, I feel like Sega cut them off because there has not been any Sega merch announcements or game announcements to my knowledge since then. I feel like Sega was like, you got to make things right and maybe we'll revisit the contract. And that's why Limited Run Games is throwing Josh under the bus in all their emails.
Poor guy. I mean, it probably was his
And
fault, but that sucks.
it probably was. But he does own uh, digital pictures now, like the catalog. So they will still have to work with him on the Prize Fighter physical release that's coming. But anyway, yeah, for me, I actually, so I skipped the GameCube. I bought a Wii in 2009 because I was anticipating, I was like, I got to get one because Sonic Colors is coming out. It's not going to be on any other console. And then I was like, oh man, I can play the GameCube games I missed. So in 2009, I also picked up Billy Hatcher, Sonic Gems Collection, Spike Out. No, not Spike Out. Virtua Strike. What's the volleyball one?
Uh, Virtual, no, something Strikers. I don't even know what it's called.
Virtua. Yeah,
There's a soccer one
AM2.
too.
I know. I didn't get that one. I need to, but I picked it up and I was like, oh my god, I own Sonic the Fighters now. It took me like 1990, probably 8. I was playing it at the Minnesota State Fair, and now it's 10 years later, and I'm finally playing it on my Wii. But yeah, so I have that. I have the Xbox Live Arcade one. I really, really wish, and I don't know why they haven't done it. I guess it's because Josh screwed things up with Sega, but I really wish there was an Xbox disc release of Sonic the Fighters. I think that would have been so cool. And as much as I dislike how limited run games like overdoes it with the swag, I would have loved to see the swag. We'll talk about swag actually right now.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the Limited Run Games website, but they haven't had really limited editions like that anymore, like the big ones. And their stock of what's available is pretty minute. So I don't know what's happening. They're probably trying to figure it out over there. I just thought it was interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. And I kind of wish they did it though, and I wish they did like some merch, because Sonic the Fighters, as far as merch, it's actually highly collectible because the items were only released in Japan alongside the arcade release. They didn't make their way to the West until like people either visited or bought stuff online. So the roster, they had their own UFO catcher plushes. There were also posters, telephone cards, shirts, and something called a UFO disc. And I don't know, is it just you and me on the screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look below us, you can see some of that merch. I put it in the art. But yeah, the UFO disc, I didn't know what this thing was. It's this huge, it's almost like a big plastic, like bubbly button thing. And I don't know what it is, but it's cool. It was like a thing I guess you could win from UFO catchers, or maybe it was on the machine to market the plushes. I'm not sure what this thing is. I have to look up UFO discs. US fans of the game's original characters saw their inclusion in the Archie and IDW comics, with Ian Flynn and the team expanding on Bark, Bean, and Honey's personalities. Now, I know Ken Penders has his detractors. I think he did good for the time that he was there. Toward the end, it got a little muddy. But I do feel like Ian Flynn was the right man for the job, because he's the one that actually appreciated these weird deep cuts and would actually give them, character personalities and appearances. And there was this great arc, and I don't know if it kind of like, it's a little muddy for me. I don't really know which issues it includes, but they brought in Breezy, who was from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. She's like the blue, like the light blue hedgehog who's actually a robot. And then they also introduced Honey, and Honey was actually, well, we'll get to it. But so talking about Bark, so Bark was in the comics. He became a stoic hothead, so he was a little less like shy and calm. He was a little angrier. Bean became a psychotic explosives expert / woodpecker, and Honey was a fashion designer. Comic storylines would give nods to Sonic the Fighters, and there's even an alternate cover for the Archie Sonic issues featuring a Sonic the Fighters arcade machine. I actually have that issue right here. You can see it on the video. It's Sonic standing next to a Sonic the Fighters machine, but with CG renders, like modern CG renders of Honey and Amy going at it. It even has Bark and Bean and all the characters, like their move sets up there, and the Sonic the Hedgehog comic logo replaces Sonic the Fighters. So I always loved this issue cover. I got it. I think it kind of went up in price since then. This version's kind of in bad shape. It's definitely not a 9.0. But yeah, that's what they gave us.
Have you ever seen these plushies from the fighters on eBay and how much they cost?
Oh man, no, I should look them up right now.
Yeah,
it's actually not good for me because
I pulled them up and they're pretty expensive. Some people want like
much.
600 for the Eggman one alone, 800 for the Fang one.
Oh wow, 500 for Eggman, 900 for Fang. I can't with the plushies. Here's 409, but they look like bootlegs.
Yeah.
It says they're mascot keychains, but they look a little bootleggy. And Tails' tail is missing. You know what? I think they are legit looking at them, but maybe they aren't. I love the Metal Sonic, though. He's wall-eyed. He looks like a little baby boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are pretty cool. I'd be honest, like I would be cool with a set of bootlegs, just because they're probably super cheap. But we are in an era now where even bootlegs are expensive.
It's crazy.
I went to a toy convention a few years ago, and there were these very clearly bootleg Sonic action figures. They were they were Sonic, but in weird clear plastic colors, and they stank of like chemical smell. Like they clearly used like something to make the plastic that was breaking down as I was looking at them. And I was like, just out of curiosity, I was at this guy, I'm like, how much is this? And he's like, oh, they're bootleg. And I'm like thinking, okay, yeah, they are bootleg. They're going to be cheap. And he's like, $40 each. And I was like, no, I don't want to buy it. I don't want to get poisoned by a bootleg Sonic toy.
Yeah.
But,
crazy.
Yeah. And then talking of some other cameos that they've made, Bark and Bean made cameos in Wanted posters in Sonic Generations, and they were Phantom Ruby projected enemies in Sonic Mania's Mirage Saloon stage alongside Fang. And we actually have some footage here. We can check this out. This is the Sonic Mania boss fight. It's only a minute long. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but
I'll skip to the fight. Oh, there's Fang.
Yeah, they got Fang. And then
Fang again.
I think at around 46 seconds, Bean comes up real quick and then disappears.
Oh, there he is.
Then he comes back again. Yeah. It's almost like you want this to be a bad player so you can watch more of the enemy gameplay. But yeah, Bean is there throwing bombs, and then Bark appears. Yeah. And he goes real quick. But it's cool because Bark and Bean made their first appearance ever as 3D characters. They never actually were 2D sprites. So it is really cool to see them now in this like 16-bit style. Fang, meanwhile, he started as an 8-bit character and then made the jump to 3D. So he never actually had a 16-bit version. So I always really liked how Mirage Saloon Zone gave us really our first official 16-bit look at Bark, Bean, and Fang. So there you go. And then most recently, the Sonic 3 movie end credits drew inspiration from Sonic the Fighters, with 3D models evoking the game's graphics and giving us a look at Shadow, Agent Stone, Ivo Robotnik, and Gerald Robotnik in blocky 3D styles. So let's take a look at this with the volume off so Jelly Roll doesn't kill us.
Sorry, Jelly
Doesn't roll over us.
Sorry, Jelly Roll. We're gonna play the video without your beautiful music.
I know. I'm sorry. Days like this can't get much better. Good, better.
You think he's offended?
No, I don't think so. So, how did you react when you saw this for the first time? Did you know it was going to happen?
No, I thought it was pretty cool that he did it. They keep trying to reenact old games, and I'm like, I'm surprised they haven't just did this. But yeah, this one's better than the 2D one. I do like that they finally went more 3D. Like they're kind of doing an evolution of the credits. We're at the Saturn era. I'm waiting for Sonic Adventure.
I guess Sonic 4 would have Sonic Adventure graphics, which would be really cool. But yeah, I remember. So I think the Jelly Roll music video came out first, and they had some of this stuff because there was a Jelly Roll version of them that doesn't appear in the movie, but in the music video he does. So I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, this is awesome. They actually used the same elements from the music video for the end credits. And
Shadow
the designer
game.
of yeah, it's cool seeing.
It's cool that there's a Shadow model that looks like the fighters. That's it.
Right. And the top comment is the only time Sega will ever allow a classic Shadow to exist. And I've never really been on that like classic Shadow thing. It's some people really want a classic Shadow, and I'm like, well, he was in a stasis pod, so he never really was classic. He was just like frozen until we needed him for Sonic Adventure 2. But no, I do really appreciate the work they did here. It's like kind of like a nod to the Death Egg Mark II, where they go into space. But yeah, very cool. So what are your final thoughts on Sonic the Fighters? And I think you've already answered this, but would you like to see a sequel?
Sequel for sure. I think the game had a lot of potential. It was obviously put together by a team at AM2 as a break project. I feel like they could have added more to it. It could have been Sega's own sort of Smash Brothers with they have the huge cast, and it's something that I feel like they should try more of, and they don't. Kind of like Nintendo doesn't just give up right away when they do a new idea. They keep adding to it. There's like 100 Mario parties. Sega did Sonic Shuffle one time, and then they're like, oh, we're never doing that again. They did a fighting game, and oh, we're never doing that again. They took forever to do the next racing game after they did their first one. So I feel like maybe this is something fans would like. But I would like a sequel. I think it would be cool, especially now with the IDW comics and Crossworlds and how they handled that. I think merging all that experience into a fighting game would be very interesting.
I agree. I think too that with the Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing and Team Sonic Racing and Sonic Racing franchise, like with Crossworlds, people want to have the Sega cameos. They almost expect it. And they're very much down on the game when it doesn't have it. Whereas here, I think if they made a Sonic the Fighters follow-up game, I don't think people would be asking for Sega cameos. If anything, they'd be like, go deep in the Sonic, character canon and really surprise us. Like, give us modern takes on Bark, Bean, and Fang. Bring the IDW characters in, like have Whisper, have Tangle. I think they could really go all out, and I think too that just because of how fighting games operate, really all you're adding for content are new character models and new movesets. So yeah, it's kind of wild they haven't done it. I'm still fingers crossed we get some really wild announcement come June 23rd on Sonic's birthday. But I feel like right now all we really know is coming is a Switch 2 version of Sonic Frontiers, which
Shadow?
may or may not also... Which I don't know about that. You keep expecting it, but we'll see. But I would love to see a Sonic fighting game release next year, but I guess the problem is they're so focused on Virtua Fighter that I don't think they want to dilute it and be like, well, Virtua Fighter 6 is coming, but we also have a Sonic fighting game. And people are like, I don't care about Virtua Fighter now. I don't know. I feel like they could both coexist, but yeah.
I agree.
Let's read our Patreon memories, and then we will share what we were talking about on the next episode. So, Ben Hayward, who was our picker wheel picker, said, it seems like the Gems collection is a theme throughout the other comments. Ooh, I guess he's coming in last, but I'm reading him first. And that is how I encountered this game too. I wasn't even aware of the original arcade release, but when my brother got the Gems collection, I couldn't believe that a game like this would even exist. I had a lot of fun with it, including trying to activate a supersonic cheat that turned out to be bogus, but I didn't care because it was great fun to play anyway. Thanks for covering this one. Nicholas Schaefer says, this is one of those games I knew of and was always searching for, but didn't get to play until the Gems collection. Honestly, this game alone made the Gems collection worth it for me. I love the over-the-top animation, the ridiculous story, and seeing a rocket version of Metal Sonic that had Mecha Sonic's name blew my kid mind. I would also love for them to do a new one in the most recent Virtua Fighter engine. In fact, make it a Sega All-Stars 3D Fighter before Nintendo does a 3D Smash. Come on, Sega. Daniel Andres said, did I pick this one? I don't feel like I picked this one. Oh, you didn't pick this one. But we'll read your memory.
You could take credit.
Daniel says, you can take co-credit. Anyways, Sonic the Fighters is a fun game to put on every now and then. First time I ever played it was on Sonic Gem Collection, and imagine my surprise when I found out that AM2 made this game. Very awesome discovery, if I do say so myself. Also, what is up with the 8th Chaos Emerald? Very weird. This game's slapstick humor never ceases to amaze me. Good game. If you haven't played it yet, please do, at least once, to get a feel for it yourself. And then lastly, we have Ando, who says, my main memory of this game is waiting forever for the Saturn port that never ended up coming out. I'd visit my local game store almost every week asking if they had any news about it. It obviously wouldn't be until the Gems collection where I finally got to play it. Obviously couldn't live up to the insane self-inflicted hype, but I still like the game a lot, and still do. So that closes the book on Sonic the Fighters, but it doesn't close the book on Sonic the Hedgehog. George.
Yeah?
Next episode, you are going to be covering Sonic the Hedgehog CD. And as I say that, I'm like, we must have covered it, but we didn't. I looked it up. We have not.
Surprising.
It's surprising. It's a pick from Nicholas Schaefer. So we'll get to that, and then we'll see what happens after that. But looking forward to that episode, and we will see you next time on Sega Talk.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye-bye.